happy to invite our host here, Mr. Oren Wieinberg, the National Library of Israel Director.
I have three comments before Professor Shazaf that asked why audiobooks are not very popular in Israel. There is a reason for that. We like to more to talk than listen, but here we are for listening. So the second comment is something that I came to the hotel last night quite late, and at the reception the guy told me, "Oh, you're from the National Library? Oh, there is Google National Library. So what is happening here?" And he looked at my face. He didn't interpret me correctly because I was tired, but he was thinking that I was disappointed from his comment. So he left it at that. And I'll start from now. So I would like to welcome you for the National Library of Israel. Oh, sorry, the third comment is that I'm reading from paper, and it's quite embarrassing in this situation. Okay. The seminar is part of an ongoing effort to understand the challenges of the National Library faces in making cultural assets accessible and usable for a wide range of audiences here in Israel and outside of the physical boundaries of the state. We are happy to see you all here today, ready to share your knowledge and experience, because this is part of what is happening with the digital revolution. I would like to thank all those that helped in organizing the event: חיפה Center for Law and Technology, the Sagi Center for Internet and Research, National Library staff, and of course Yad Nadiv that helped us promoting this important effort in clearing up legal obstacles. A little bit of history on the National Library. It is an institution with a long history, founded in 1892 as one of the first national institutions long before the State of Israel was founded. Since 1925 and until this year, the library has been part of the Hebrew University. It moved locations several times until it settled in its current building in 1960, in its current building on this beautiful campus. One big change concerned with the location in this campus is that the humanities are moved from here in the 70s to another campus in Mount Scopus and left us alone with the sciences, the exact sciences, and we are focused more on humanities. So here is a big change for us and for the university. Some facts and figures on the National Library, the collection size, if you look at numbers. And by the way, Shazaf told that libraries were assigned for richness in the past. Now usually we look at the poor side of the big libraries. So this is a part about problems of funding. So we have about 5 million items in the collection, about 130 full-time positions. The building here is 20,000 square meters, and our annual budget this year is about $37 million. So it's not a big organization if we compare it to other national libraries, and it of course affects our strategies and abilities to work in the physical or digital arena. Now, why change for us? The appearance of the internet, of course, in the 90s and the subsequent information revolution propelled by broad reach of the internet, and the ability to find quality information everywhere and at any time change the way information is created, of course, and used. The internet also changed the way research is conducted and the information expectation of national library clients. These changes in the external environment have been accompanied by a significant decrease in government allocation here in Israel for higher education system in general, which has dramatic impact on what was before the National Library, the Jewish National and University Library. At that time, as a part of the Hebrew University, and the effect of this decreased support included a reduction in our acquisition budget, an aging staff, lack of technology, and of course problems in the physical premises. And since 1998, it was clear that the Hebrew University cannot any longer support this national institution. The needs of a suitable national library was not fulfilled, and the library, with the support of the university, the government, and Yad Nadiv, started to cooperate in building the concept of a state-of-the-art of national library for Israel and for the Jewish people as a whole. Almost 10 years passed, and it's not a long time in terms of National Library or in Israeli building institution. And we had two official commissions, one international, one within Israel, issued their recommendation. In 2007, the law of recreating the National Library was passed, and the new law set forth the goals of the National Library. It's quite similar to other national libraries around the world. It's to collect, preserve, make accessible the knowledge, tradition, and cultural treasures in general, and in relation to the land of Israel, the state of Israel, and the Jewish people in particular. Following the passing of the law, an agreement was signed between the Hebrew University and the National Library. The agreement detailed the separation process of the library from the university and established the National Library of Israel as an independent entity. This is the situation that we are facing since the beginning of this year. So we are in a process of renewal or rebuilding this institution. As part of the renewal process, the National Library is focusing on four subject areas: Jewish studies and Judaica, documenting Israel, Islam and Middle East, and general humanities. This requires the National Library to establish a strict policy on what is not needed in the library, as well as what is needed, and actually is to teach our librarians, or to work with our librarians, the art of saying no, to getting collections more and more in it, and to try to focus on what is the core business of this institution. Another change involves working and creating, of course, e-content. This step is not easy, one, taking into consideration that there are no remote users for a national library usually, unless you deal with national licensing for content that you buy, you purchase from others. And there are very few countries that dealt with this problem and dealt with national licensing for the country. Most of our clientele is humanities researchers, and still we see that humanities are going a little bit slower in adapting e-content, especially in at least in what are the users that we have in the building. Archives, ephemera, and manuscripts are of course a special interest for us, and we are now reformatting all our collection policies in those areas. Now, that's a very short description of what the stages that we have been up to until now. Now, going to the discussion today on digital content areas. We identified three main content areas as part of our digital strategy, areas that affect our target audiences and represent the strength of our collection. The fact, of course, that we focus on limited areas doesn't mean that we are planning to close all other opportunities. The first one is history of the Jewish people from 1860 to 1960. In this area, we plan to provide access to 5 million newspapers. Actually, I don't like numbers because numbers are usually full others, and they have no real meaning in terms of digital access, because what is the difference between 4.5 and 5 million newspaper pages and so on? The real meaning is what is going to be used. But anyhow, it's always nice to show off the numbers, especially if we look at this as a small institution. So we are planning to do 5 million newspaper pages from Israel and international Jewish newspaper in languages of the Jews, and of course some of other languages published in Israel. We will select archives from archive department here in the National Library, and of course from external archives, because we don't hold everything. Compromising about 150,000 photographs and thousands of historical maps, all those related to the first topic. The second one is Israeli culture, or what we call the Israeli bookshelf. In this area, the National Library is emphasized on what we call Israeliana. We are planning to digitize about 150,000 Hebrew and Israeli books, 30,000 hours of recordings from the National Sound Archive, and hundreds of thousands of letters from prominent Hebrew writers from various archives. The third area is Jewish texts from the Bible to the Middle Ages, Hebrew medieval manuscripts will be, of course, in a big catalog that unify all Hebrew manuscripts around the world, and with a selected number of digital versions connected to this catalog in cooperation with other institutions and private collectors that hold Hebrew manuscripts. In this area, the National Library hopes also to cooperate with the Israel Antiquities in giving access on the Dead Sea Scrolls and the beautiful project that is called the Gniza, the Friedrich Gniza project that holds hundreds of thousands of fragments from around the world that's already been digitized. So we see this as a whole corpus that goes with Jewish texts from the Bible until Middle Ages. Now, I would like now to go to describe what is happening in the e-content in Hebrew, try to understand where we are compared to what happens around us. In 2010, we estimated was published more than 6,200 titles published in Israel. About 84% of those are in Hebrew. It doesn't mean that there is no Hebrew publication outside of Israel, but the main Hebrew publications are here. And we estimate that the total corpus of Hebrew literature amounts to 500,000 titles. That includes, of course, versions of titles, more editions, of course, of the same title. It is hard to us right now to estimate what percentage has already been digitized. But if we are trying to map some of the players in the digitizing of Hebrew text, we probably end up with less than 60,000 titles altogether. And there are some, of course, parallel in different projects that have been done. We have been, until now, digitized and make available mainly newspaper, about 500,000 newspaper pages, about 2,000 books and manuscripts, and maps, photographs, music, and ephemera. Other organizations, commercial vendors, offer access now to a variety of e-sources in Israel. We have HebrewBooks.org in the States that presumably digitize some 45,000 Hebrew texts. And Open University has done some good work on that and digitizing their textbook. Israeli Center for Education Technology is working on a platform called Qatar that has a lot of cooperation with Israeli publishers and offer text there. Universities, government organizations have offered several thousand titles. Some are, of course, freely available, some per paid. And there is a technology venture called Ivrit that, well, let's say it's like a Hebrew Kindle type product. It has several hundred titles. And we see that some publishers already offer now e-versions of the current publication, but less deals with their backlist. So what we plan to do in the future, we plan to digitize approximately 150,000 Hebrew and Israeli titles in the next 5 years. And the question is what to prioritize and what needs are we going to fulfill in doing that. The National Library target audiences, as any other national library, are varied. We focus on academic research, the educational system, professionals, and the public at large. And there is uniqueness for this national library because we not only deal with the public in the geographical of Israel, but we have at least public in the Jewish world around the globe with many different languages and interests. So each of these audiences has different needs, and the content we can offer them and the methods of access are varied as well. In terms of selecting content to be digitized, we have two main approaches. The first one is to begin with the oldest and rarest material without doing any selecting specific items or categories. The second approach is selecting content to be digitized according to specific criteria, either preservation, user needs, subject areas, legal limitations, and availability of funds. The National Library will do both, probably, as we can't ignore the efficiency of the first approach or the needs fulfillment of the second approach. With both approaches, legal constraints may determine whether we can digitize content and even more important, make it available. Our basic approach is that any investment of public and private money for digitization projects managed by the National Library should result in open access and free usage for everyone. This does not mean that we are going to digitize only the Bible. We plan to handle limitation of copyright, privacy, and ownership first by clarifying what can be done without risk, and there is much content we can digitize without any risk. Then we are going to have material that has clear limitations. In regard to material, we will seek to address the source of the limitation. If the limitation is ownership of rights, we will try to collaborate with the owner to secure the best solution that serves and protects all interests. We see authors, publishers, libraries, and aggregators as important partners in the creation process, and we would not like to see everybody working against each other. So in terms that there is clear definition of ownership, we will try to negotiate either to clear restriction or to have other model of access together with the National Library. The third area is mentioned before is a gray one, in which ownership is not clear or known. We believe that in many cases the only body that can make those works available is the National Library, because no other body will invest in providing access or take the risk. In this area we conduct a risk analysis and move forward with projects even if the legal aspects are not absolutely clear. An example of such project is now one that we are doing in digitization of what's called the Shitim institution. This institution collects material from kibbutzim that describes the daily life in kibbutzim, and it is an important source in sociology, communication, and history. In many cases, the texts that we have there have no author name or any other indication of a region. And in this case, we are taking the risk. We are going to digitize everything. We're going to put it on the web. We have some more what we call boutique projects like those, like what we have in the Haredic neighborhood here, Nash Harim, that people collect what we call pashkevil, that's advertisement of this community, and we are going to digitize a huge collection of those ephemera material and put it on the web. And there are questions of course, ownership, liable, sometimes privacy, but we are going to do it with limitation on some of the material. But this is something that we tend to take the risk because we think this is a good research material, primary material, and we own it actually to those that fund us to bring back this material to the society. Now, I would like to conclude by saying that changes must be made in the legal framework of intellectual property, not at the expense of rights of the owners, but in the cases where works have no clear owner or right holder. In such cases, there is no sense in preventing access to works that are not going to be a source of income to authors and publishers. The National Library will work to change this situation in coming years, advocating for change either on the public and regulatory levels. Our hope is that we can generate support for this effort from those that will profit from the change, also and the public. Thank you.